Hello, welcome back to In Pursuit of Life with Dr. Caleb. In my previous videos, I talked about infertility and pregnancy loss. I talked about how they impacted my own life as my wife and I experienced several miscarriages and a stillbirth a couple years ago. I talked about how these issues have impacted many of my family, my friends, and some of my patients as well. I talked about how this is a lot more common issue than we tend to realize, and I discussed some of the common causes that can lead to infertility and pregnancy loss, as well as some of the testing procedures that we would do in the clinic if you were to come see me to try and help you in your pregnancy journey. As we continue through these videos, I'm going to discuss each of these causes in much greater detail, looking at specific mechanisms and processes that lead to infertility and pregnancy loss. But before we look more at what the abnormal or dysfunction looks like, we need to have a greater understanding of what normal function of the reproductive system looks like. So that's what I'm going to focus on in these next several videos. We're going to start by looking at the communication channel that the body uses from the brain to the gonads, which are going to be the testes in the males and the ovaries in females, how that stimulates the reproductive processes, how that leads to creation of sperm or spermatogenesis, or the maturing of eggs through the oogenesis process. We're going to look at the menstrual cycle in females as well, looking at the different hormones involved in that, how that is impacted in pregnancy, and then we'll look at each stage of pregnancy, early, mid, and late pregnancy as well. We're going to start by looking at the communication channel, which is the HPG axis. That stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, and gonads. The hypothalamus is a structure deep in the brain that receives signals from all over the body and works to maintain balance or homeostasis. The hypothalamus performs many different functions across the body, but we're going to focus in on how it impacts the reproductive cycle. So we're just going to focus in on one hormone that is associated with that, and that's going to be the gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH. The GnRH will travel from the hypothalamus and will travel to the pituitary gland, which is also connected to the brain, and this will stimulate the release of the gonadotropins, follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, and luteinizing hormone, or LH. When luteinizing hormone gets to the gonads, it's going to stimulate the release of the important sex hormones that we need. So in males, it's going to go to the Leydig cells, which is going to increase testosterone release. And then in females, it's going to go to the theca cells, which is going to increase progesterone and estrogen production. So when FSH gets to the gonads, in males, it's going to stimulate the Sertoli cells, which is going to stimulate the spermatogenesis process. And then in females, it's going to stimulate the granulosa cells, which is going to stimulate the folliculization or maturing of the egg. So that leads into that oogenesis, which prepares the egg for ovulation. We're going to look at these processes or these cycles in much greater detail in the next couple videos, but what I want to talk about right now is how does the body know if it has enough of the hormone, or if it has too much or not enough. So I talked about how the hypothalamus starts this cascade of events and how it receives signals from across the body that either stimulate this process or inhibit this process. The specific messages that the hypothalamus is going to be receiving is going to be the specific levels of these hormones, the FSH and the LH. If the levels are high for either one of these, it's going to inhibit the GnRH, or the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Now, these hormones can also feed back directly to the pituitary to prevent further release of FSH and LH. Now, these aren't the only feedback loops. Testosterone and estrogen can also feed back to both of these areas, the hypothalamus and pituitary, to inhibit or stimulate. So specifically with estrogen, we're going to see that low estrogen is going to inhibit the release, but high estrogen is actually going to stimulate the release of more. And we'll talk about why when we go through the menstrual cycle in the next couple of videos. As you can see, the HPG axis is a very critical part of the reproductive process, and any interferences or hindrances in its function is going to significantly diminish our reproductive ability and possibly lead to many other health issues as well. If you want to learn more about spermatogenesis and oogenesis, I'm going to cover those step by step in the next video. So make sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to stay up to date with all those videos. And until I see you again, take care and be blessed.